I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife came home from the grocery store. She saw the notebook on the table in front of me and the pen in my hand and asked, "What are you doing?" I decided to take up your challenge. I don't remember. Remember last week when we were reading those stories on that website? I commented on how bad some of them were and said that even I could write better. You said I couldn't. You said I didn't have a creative streak. I probably did say that, but my comment was based on what I know about your grades when we were in school. You always got B's and C's on your class assignments that required writing, and you got a C on the assignment you had to do for business research and report writing. Well, I think I can do better now. Never mind, come help me carry the groceries. I helped her carry the bags and put some things away, then sat back down at the table and started writing. While she was making dinner, she asked, "What's that about?" "I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you read it when I'm done, and you can critique it before I post it online." I didn't think it would be too difficult. Sure, nothing I did in college earned me great grades, but I didn't need them back then. I just did what I had to do to get by in those classes. I didn't want to be there at all, but my parents more or less forced me to go. My dad wouldn't let me work in the family business without a bachelor's degree in business management. I had worked there after school and during the summers since I was 13, and I wanted to work there when I finished high school, but my dad said no. Only with a degree. It's necessary for you to be able to work full-time. So I accepted that. I got my degree and went to work for the family business. I looked down at my notebook, picked up a pen, and began. My name is Josh Barnum. I'm an aircraft mechanic for a major airline and married to Melinda Barnum. Melinda, I call her Melly, is an office manager at an insurance company. Melly and I have been together for just over 11 years, 9 of them married. We met in our sophomore year of college, and for me it was love at first sight. For Melly? Maybe. It took me 3 months to get her to go out with me. We clicked. On our 7th date, we made love for the first time. After that, we became a steady couple and usually made love 2 or 3 times a week, at least until the summer. I had a summer job working for my Uncle Bill, who owned a landscaping company. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. As a result, I rarely got to see Melly during the week. After 3 weeks of only seeing each other on Sundays, Melly started dating other guys. When I complained about it, she told me to deal with it or lose my Sundays. This was a defining moment in our relationship. I've already said that when it came to Melly, it was love at first sight, so I gave in to avoid losing her completely. At the time, I didn't realize what a mistake that was. It showed her that she could get away with a lot with me and that I would let things stay the way they were. It was 3 weeks later, on a Friday, and I had only worked 6 hours before calling it quits due to severe thunderstorms. I called Melly to see if she would go on a date with me that evening, and she told me she already had a date. I hung up without saying another word. I called around to see if anyone was doing anything and found out that Mike Matson was having a party at his house. I called and found out that I was welcome, so I decided to go. Bad move on my part. I walked in just in time to see Melly hugging and then kissing Dick Moore. Then they went out onto an impromptu dance floor where Melly pressed herself against Moore, and they danced slowly. Moore held her ass with both hands and pressed her tightly against him. Melly wrapped her arms around his neck, pulled his face toward her, and gave him a long, hot kiss. When the song ended, they seemed reluctant to pull away from each other. But when they finally did, Melly saw me. She said something to Dick, then headed in my direction. I turned and left the party. Damn me if I was going to stand there while she kissed someone else. The weather was nice on Saturday, so I ended up working a 12-hour day. I learned not to waste time calling Melly on Saturday night to make a date for Sunday, because she would be with someone else. I usually called her on Sunday around 10 and made plans for the afternoon and evening, but that Sunday morning, I didn't call. It was one thing to know she was dating when I wasn't available, but it was quite another to know she was kissing her dates. It seemed like the heat I had noticed between her and her date was some kind of sign that they were probably sleeping together, too. This planted a bad thought in my head. According to what Melly had told me, she hadn't dated any guy more than 4 times. So the question I asked myself after what I saw at Matt's was, had Melly slept with all of her boyfriends? If that was the case, I could be in trouble, since we usually had sex on our Sunday dates, and I had heard and believed that when you have sex with someone, you have sex with everyone that person has had sex with. I thought that maybe getting tested for STDs would be a good idea. Thinking that since Melly hadn't heard from me on Sunday morning, she might call me, I got the hell out of the house and was gone all day. When I got home for dinner, my mom told me that Melly had called twice and wanted me to call her when I got home. I waited until I finished dinner to call her. She got right down to business. Why didn't you call me this morning? I just thought, considering how you were kissing that guy who replaced me. We already talked about this, Josh. I'm not going to stay home just because you can't come. I know, and I was okay with that when I thought it was just platonic, but what I saw was way, way beyond platonic. I thought we had something special, Melissa, but I'm not so sure anymore. Don't say that, Josh. We really do have something special. We need to talk, baby. I don't care how late you have to work tomorrow, but when you're free, come over. Will you do that? I think I can. You promise? Okay, I'll be there as soon as I'm free. Monday was a 12-hour workday, so I didn't get to Melissa's house until around 9. Her mom opened the door and told me Melissa was waiting for me in the backyard. Melly was talking on the phone with her back to the door when I stepped outside, and what I overheard before she hung up didn't bode well for our relationship. What I heard was, I liked what we did on Friday. I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. I have to go. He'll be here soon. Bye. I went back into the house and then opened the door to the patio with a loud bang, and she turned around and saw me coming out of the house. I didn't let on that I had overheard anything, just walked over to the table and sat down. I just looked at her and waited. She finally realized that I wasn't going to start the conversation, so she said, What's wrong, Josh? You agreed to let me go on a date when you couldn't make it. Yeah, but I thought these dates were supposed to be like going to the movies and maybe getting a milkshake at Harry's. Or maybe to a party like Matt's where you dance and hang out with our friends. Simple things. You're acting like you're still my girlfriend. That's not what I saw at Matt's. The way you kissed that guy and let him run his hands all over your body without even trying to stop him pretty much told me that if he's not sleeping with you already, he will soon. Not exactly how I expected my girlfriend to behave in front of my friends. Those are disgusting things to say to me. It is what it is. Maybe you should just leave. That's probably best. After what I saw and not knowing how you feel about all your dates, I think it would be a good idea to get tested. I stood up and left her there with a shocked look on her face. I made it to my car before she caught up with me. You don't really think that about me, do you? What I saw on Friday night was pretty rough, Melly. I don't want to take any chances. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing there watching me. I did get tested, clean, but I never called Melly to tell her. We avoided each other for a little over a week, and then on Thursday, while I was eating lunch in the student cafeteria, Melly came over to my table, sat down, and said, You didn't call me on Sunday. There was no need. That's not fair, Josh. Why do you expect me to sit at home 6 days a week because of your job? Maybe because I see it as an education. What the hell does that mean? Maybe it's to prepare you for what you might have to do after you get married, and your husband has a job that keeps him working late. That's just silly. Being married isn't the same as going to school. Maybe that's how you see it, but I don't. You knew all along that I was going to ask you to marry me after you graduated, and you made me believe you would say yes. You know that I'm majoring in aviation maintenance management, and when I graduate, I'll have my airplane and power plant licenses. My goal is to work for an airline and move up the career ladder. There's a damn good chance that if I do get a job with an airline as a rookie, I'll have the worst shifts and the worst weekends. If you can't handle my work schedule now, how are you going to handle my shift from 3 to 11 with Tuesdays and Wednesdays off? That's different. I'll be working too, and we'll do whatever we have to do to make it work for both of us. That's in the future if we have one. Right now, we need to survive as a couple, and I'm not sure we can, given what I now know about your dating life. We agreed to talk that evening after I finished work, and in the end, she gave in and said she would only meet on Fridays and Saturdays and would always make sure that our dates took place around my friends. That way, I could always ask someone if she was doing anything that wouldn't pass the boyfriend test. It helped that landscaping was a seasonal job that ended in late fall. Until the end of our course and throughout graduation, I kept a close eye on her, and she only slipped up 3 times, and I pretended not to notice. Why? Blame it on love. When we finished school, Melly moved in with me, and we lived together while our parents planned the wedding. It was a new experience for both of us, being able to make love every day and not rush home. There were nights when I wasn't sure I'd be able to get out of bed in the morning. It seemed like all Melly wanted, and me too, oh yes, me too, was to make love all the time. But of course we couldn't. I really got along well with the airline, and as always I had the worst shift, from 4 in the morning until midnight, with Wednesdays and Thursdays off. Melly had a degree in accounting and got a job at an accounting firm where she worked from 8 to 5, with Saturdays and Sundays off. During tax season, from about the end of January to the 1st of May, she usually worked 10 to 12 hours a day, and sometimes she had to work on Saturdays. We got married 5 months after we graduated, and our wedding gift from both sets of parents was the down payment on a 4-bedroom ranch in one of the best neighborhoods in town. Neither of us wanted to have children until we were established in our careers, so Melly used one of the bedrooms as a home office. There was a fairly large patio at the back of the house, and one of our first purchases after moving in was a hot tub, which was installed on one side of the patio. It didn't take long before it was filled. A month after the tub was installed, we had a housewarming party, and after everyone tried the tub, it seemed like we had a party every weekend. Not that I minded the company. I had to leave by 2:45 to get to work on time. As we got to know our neighbors, we started getting invited to barbecues and picnics, and once that started, we had to host a couple of our own, of course. We became really good friends with the neighbors on both sides of us and with those who live across the street. The first 2 years went great, and we adjusted to our different schedules. And then everything changed. I didn't find out about this until much later, but it was pretty much what I had been talking about when I spoke to Melinda back in college. I worked on Fridays and Saturdays, and Melinda was tired of sitting at home on the best date nights. At first, it was walks with the girls after work on Fridays, evenings she never told me about. After a couple of months, she decided that since she got away with me not finding out about her outings with the girls, she could get away with going out on Saturdays. She just needed to be home in bed by the time I got home. She started going on dates with guys she worked with and guys she met at parties. I don't know when this nonsense started, so I had no idea how long it had been going on. But I found out from a neighbor who lived across the street. He was out drinking with a client on Friday night after dinner and saw Melinda dancing provocatively with some guy and acting like a princess. On Saturday morning, when Melinda went out shopping, he came over and told me what he had seen. It upset me, but it didn't surprise me. He told me that his brother was a police officer who moonlighted as a private investigator on his weekends, and his brother's weekends were Friday and Saturday. His brother's rates were 25% of what a full-time private investigator would charge, so I asked him to have his brother contact me. All it cost me was for him to follow Melinda from Friday when she left work until she went home, and on Saturday from the moment I left work until she went home, which cost $600, and it was worth every penny. On Friday, when Melinda got off work, she went straight to the bar, and before she could sit down on a bar stool, a guy bought her a drink and danced with her. They left the bar at 8 and checked into motel number 6. And yes, they left the lights on, and stayed in room 107 until 11, and then she went home. On Saturday, she didn't even leave the house. At 4, Philby, her boss, arrived, and although Spencer, the police officer, was unable to film what was happening in the house, he took some pretty good shots of Melinda entertaining her boss. On my first day off, I took everything I had to a divorce lawyer, and after looking at what I had, he suggested I contact her boss for a separation of assets and her company if there was anything in their policy and procedure manual about relationships between managers and those they supervise. Her boss owns the company, and when I told him that, I could almost see dollar signs in his eyes. I told him to go ahead and get on it. He told me to give him a week or so and he would have the paperwork ready for me to sign. I left his office, hoping I could act like the ignorant fool I was, until I got Spencer's report. I guess I must have succeeded, because Melinda didn't seem any different to me. The lawyer called me a week later and said he had the papers ready for me to sign. When I went to his office, he smiled and said he had very good news for me. Apparently, her boss had bragged to everyone in the office that he had slept with Melinda. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that overheard conversations are just hearsay, right? Basically, it's a he said, she said situation. Maybe if it hadn't been recorded, the guy who gave me the tape hates Philby and is always looking for a way to screw him over. Isn't there some law that says both parties have to be aware of the recording? In some states, yes, but ours isn't one of them. All right then, go ahead and do what you think is best. I finished the story, reread it, and decided it was fine. It was almost dinner time. I called my wife from the kitchen and handed her the story, asking her to read it and comment. She took the story from me and began to read it. About halfway through, she began to frown, and finally gasped loudly, looked at me, and fainted. I stood up, grabbed a glass of water, and splashed it on her face. She muttered something as I helped her up. Just then, the doorbell rang, and I told her it was probably for her. She looked embarrassed as I walked her to the door. There stood a young blonde girl. The blonde stopped chewing her gum long enough to ask, "Mrs. Melinda Barnum?" Melinda said yes, and the blonde handed her an envelope saying, "You're all set. Have a nice evening." Melinda didn't hear the last part. She fainted again when she heard that she had been served. This time I didn't bother with a glass of water. I just grabbed her leg and dragged her into the house to close the door, then went to the kitchen and got myself a beer.